I spent 30 years married to a man who believed I had killed the woman carrying his child. On my deathbed, Michael touched my face for the first time in decades. The debt is paid, he said. In the next life, I hope we never meet. Then I woke up on the night that destroyed us. Michael had been drugged. His body burned against mine as he begged me to help him. In my first life, I gave in because I still believed the boy who grew up beside me loved me. Serena watched from the doorway. Her pregnant body was pulled from the canal in a wedding dress. Michael blamed me, married me out of obligation, and punished me with 30 years of cold silence in that first life. Michael married me after Serena's death because our parents had arranged it, and because he wanted me close enough to punish. We occupied the same house and slept in the same bed, always turned away from each other. He remembered Serena on every anniversary. He placed flowers beside the canal and returned home with eyes that looked through me. If I was ill, Sir once called a doctor. If I cried, he left the room. The boy who once promised to protect me became a stranger who used marriage as a sentence. I kept waiting for him to ask what happened that night. He never did. 30 years passed without one honest conversation. And on my deathbed, he still believed I had designed Serena's death. This time, I shoved him away and pulled Serena into the room. The woman you love is here, I said. You two handle it. Michael kicked the door open almost immediately. He had not touched her. Instead, he smashed his fist into a mirror and used the pain to fight the drug. Blood ran down his arm as he glared at me. Serena is pregnant with my child. Did you push her inside? Hoping the drug would hurt them both. My blood turned cold. He had not known about the pregnancy at this point in my first life. Michael had returned too. The realization was worse than waking beside an enemy. Michael remembered the marriage, the canal, and the 30 years he spent punishing me. He had brought every old accusation into this life, but not one doubt. His second chance had not made him curious about the truth. It had only given him another opportunity to condemn me sooner. I understood then that defending myself would change nothing. In his mind, Serena's innocence was a fact, and my guilt was the explanation for everything he could not face. He called me vicious and warned that he would marry Serena in 1 month. From then on, I would be nothing but his sister. He also accused me of drugging him, so that lie had poisoned both lives. From the beginning, I did not defend myself. I simply wished them happiness. Michael looked surprised by my surrender. He did not know my parents had left a safeguard inside their will. If he married any woman other than me, he would lose everything they had given him. Until the wedding, he ordered me to serve Serena. As punishment, she made me hold a basin while she vomited. She made me massage her feet until my fingers went numb. When nobody watched, she smiled. When Michael entered, she became weak and innocent. One afternoon, she deliberately stumbled while I carried her prenatal vitamins. Scalding liquid covered my hands, raising blisters across my skin. Michael ran to her without looking at me. I stared at the ruby pendant around my neck. Michael had given it to me when I was 16, back when I believed I was precious to him. She said red was unlucky for her baby. Michael ripped the chain from my throat and threw the pendant into the fireplace. The flames swallowed the last gift I had kept from our childhood. Serena watched the ruby darken in the fire and touched her stomach as if the baby had won a battle. Michael did not ask why she needed a childhood gift destroyed. He only told me to stop looking at the flames and bring her water. The burns on my hands had already begun to blister. Serena had caused them by pretending to stumble while I carried her vitamins. Michael checked her wrists and never looked at mine when I flexed my fingers. The skin split. He heard my breath catch and still walked Serena upstairs. My obedience did not satisfy either of them. It only forced Serena to invent harsher tests. She poured vomit over my clothes and smiled while I cleaned it. She kept me kneeling at her feet for massages, then complained to Michael that my hands were too rough. She used the pregnancy as permission to take anything associated with my childhood. When Michael burned the ruby pendant, I remembered him fastening it around my neck on my 16th birthday. He had promised the stone meant I would always have a home with him. Watching it melt taught me that his promises had value only while Serena did not ask him to break them. My God studied my face after the chain snapped, perhaps waiting for tears. The lack of protest unsettled him more than anger would have. Serena announced she wanted grilled cheese from a deli across town. Rain flooded the streets, but Michael pushed me from the car and ordered me to get it. I waited an hour for a fresh batch, then carried it back beneath my jacket. Serena tripped me as I entered. The food splashed across her wedding gown. Michael kicked the container, sending hot cheese over my legs, and accused me of trying to ruin their happiness. Then he ordered me to kneel. I knelt in wet clothes while strangers watched the cold floor, numbed my burned knees, and the fever came. Before they finished choosing the dress, Serena and Michael continued choosing dresses while I remained on the floor. Customers passed with shopping bags and lowered their voices. An employee offered a towel, but Michael told her not to interfere with a family matter. The fever began before I could stand. My wet clothes stuck to the burns on my legs, and every breath shook. I remembered a childhood night when Michael sat beside my bed through a high fever and promised I would never face pain alone. That version of him existed only in memory. The man before me stepped around my body and asked Serena whether she wanted lace or satin. I spent 3 days in a hospital. The burns on my legs were less dangerous than the fever caused by kneeling in soaked clothes. I slept through most of the first day and woke whenever nurses changed the dressings. No flowers arrived, no message asked whether I could walk. In our first childhood together, Michael once stayed beside my bed all night because my temperature frightened him. Now he was choosing lace flowers and vows with Serena, while strangers treated the injuries he had ordered me to ignore. That contrast hurt more than the burns. On the morning of his wedding, I checked myself out against medical advice. I did not go to stop him. I went because Serena had sent a uniform and demanded one final humiliation in front of every guest who once called me the future Mrs. Caldwell. Michael never visited. On the 4th day, I left my bed and went to his wedding. Serena had prepared a staff uniform for me. Michael thought it would be practical if I helped serve the guests. I changed in front of them. Michael's expression shifted, but he said nothing. The uniform was too large and smelled of storage. Serena pinned a service badge over my name and told the staff not to call me Miss Caldwell. In front of the guests, Michael watched her adjust my collar. His hand moved once, as if he might stop her, then fell back to his side. He had spent weeks demanding repentance. Seeing me reduced to hired help should have satisfied him. Instead, my complete lack of resistance made him restless. He asked whether I had eaten since leaving the hospital. Serena pressed a hand to her stomach before I could answer, and his concern shifted away from me as easily as it always did. I carried champagne past former family friends. Some recognized me and looked embarrassed. Others accepted Serena's explanation that I had volunteered to serve as proof I supported the marriage. The banquet hall filled with people who knew I was the Caldwell daughter. They whispered as I stood in a corner, dressed like hired help. Michael and Serena exchanged rings beneath the chandelier. He had believed I would fight, threaten, or beg. Instead, I watched calmly as the officiant declared them husband and wife. He leaned toward Serena for their first kiss. When the official asked whether anyone objected, Michael looked toward my corner. I remained silent. He waited one beat longer than necessary before placing the ring on Serena's hand. Perhaps he expected the Stella from our first life to interrupt. Perhaps some part of him needed me to fight, so he could continue calling me the villain. My silence gave him exactly what he claimed to want. It also allowed him to complete the one act my parents had forbidden in my first life. No lawyer interrupted our wedding. Michael married me, inherited the company, and spent the next 30 years treating that inheritance as proof that our parents approved his judgment. I learned about the hidden clause only while sorting their documents after my rebirth. The wording was absolute. If Michael married any woman other than me, the inheritance would no longer be his. Michael believed marrying Serena would correct the past. In reality, his second chance had guided him toward the same arrogance the clause was written to stop. Serena smiled as if the company were already hers. She wore the ring, accepted congratulations, and held Michael's arm. While guests treated the marriage as a transfer of the Caldwell future, Michael believed possession followed marriage automatically. Neither of them had read the condition attached to my parents' estate. Their confidence made the next interruption more dangerous than any objection I could have shouted. The banquet doors opened. Until that moment, the ceremony had unfolded exactly as Michael wanted. Serena walked beneath white flowers with one hand over her unborn child. He placed the ring on her finger and searched the back of the room once, as if expecting me to object. I stood beside a service cart and said nothing. Guests whispered about the disgraced Caldwell daughter serving champagne at her own family's banquet. Michael heard them. His jaw tightened, but he did not release Serena's hand. He believed my silence meant defeat. He had no idea it was the only reason everyone could hear the lawyer clearly. When the interruption came, a man in a dark suit walked down the aisle carrying a sealed document. My name is Mr. Hayes, he said. I am the senior legal partner for Ued-Industry, and Michael's late parents entrusted me with their final instructions. Michael frowned. Serena tightened her grip on his arm. Mr. Hayes unfolded the document. I remained in my staff uniform, the blisters on my hands hidden behind my back. Michael still thought I had lost everything. The lawyer looked directly at him. There is a supplementary clause concerning what happens if you marry any woman other than Stella Caldwell. Mr. Hayes paused long enough for the room to become uncomfortable. Michael's expression hardened. What clause? Mr. Hayes looked down at the document. Section 17. If Michael Caldwell marries anyone other than Stella Caldwell, control of Ued-Industry, all associated properties, and the majority of the family trust will immediately transfer to Stella Caldwell. The room erupted. Serena's smile vanished. Michael stared at the lawyer as if he had spoken another language. That's impossible. It is not. Show me. Mr. Hayes handed him the document. Michael read it once. Then again. His face changed. Serena grabbed his sleeve. Michael? He didn't answer. She snatched the paper from his hand and scanned the clause herself. Her fingers began shaking. But the wedding already happened. Mr. Hayes nodded. Exactly. Serena's face went white. So what happens now? The marriage remains legally valid. She exhaled. Then Mr. Hayes continued. But Michael loses control of the company. Her relief disappeared. To who? Mr. Hayes turned toward me. Stella Caldwell. Every eye in the ballroom moved to me. I was still wearing Serena's oversized servant uniform. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then Serena laughed. It was nervous and ugly. That's ridiculous. Stella doesn't even work there. She doesn't need to. Mr. Hayes adjusted his glasses. Your parents established the trust specifically to ensure that their daughter could not be removed from the company through marriage manipulation. Michael's head snapped toward me. You knew. I shook my head. I knew there was a clause. You knew, and you let me marry Serena anyway? I almost laughed. Would you have listened if I told you? He went silent. Because he knew the answer. I had spent weeks trying to convince him that I wasn't his enemy. He had called me a liar. I had stopped defending myself. And now the truth had arrived without needing my help. Serena suddenly grabbed Michael's arm. But I'm carrying your child. Mr. Hayes looked at her calmly. The child has no bearing on the clause. She stared at him. You can't do this. I'm not doing anything, Mrs. Caldwell. Your husband's parents did. Michael's eyes remained fixed on me. There was something different in them now. Not guilt. Not regret. Something much more uncomfortable. Doubt. For the first time since our second life began, he looked at me as if he couldn't fit me into the villain he had already decided I was. Then Serena started crying. You knew about this. She pointed at me. You deliberately let him marry me, so you could steal everything. I looked at her. You said you wanted to marry him. Her mouth opened. Yes. So I helped. Michael's expression darkened. Don't pretend this was kindness. I never said it was. That shut him up. I turned toward Mr. Hayes. When does the transfer happen? Tomorrow morning. Serena's crying stopped. Michael stepped forward. You can't take my company. I smiled. I didn't. I looked at his wedding ring. You gave it away. That sentence hit harder than I expected. His face went pale. For 30 years in my first life, Michael had made sure I understood that marrying me was a punishment. He had always told me I had taken Serena's place. Now he had voluntarily handed me the one thing he had spent his entire life protecting. His company, his inheritance, his future. And he had done it because he believed he was punishing me. Mr. Hayes closed the folder. There's one more matter. Michael looked exhausted. What now? The trust also contains a residence clause. Serena's eyes widened. What residence? The Caldwell estate. Michael frowned. That's my house. No, Mr. Hayes said. It belonged to your parents. And the person who controls the trust controls the residence. I slowly smiled. Serena looked at me, then at Michael, then back at me. You can't throw us out. I don't have to. I picked up the champagne tray. You two can stay. Serena blinked. I walked past her. But you'll be staying in my house. The ballroom went completely silent. For the first time, Michael looked genuinely shaken. I stopped beside him. You wanted me close enough to punish, remember? His jaw tightened. Now you can stay close enough to watch me take everything you thought you owned. I walked away. Behind me, Serena began screaming. Michael didn't. He simply stood there, staring after me. And somehow, that was more satisfying. Because I knew exactly what was coming next. The woman he had spent 30 years mourning had never been his wife. The woman he had spent 30 years punishing had never been his enemy. And now he had accidentally made the woman he hated his landlord, his boss, and the owner of everything he had inherited. But there was still one problem. Serena was pregnant. And she knew exactly what she had to do. She waited until the guests left. Then she locked the ballroom doors. When Michael found her, she was sitting on the floor with one hand over her stomach. Michael. He looked at her. What? She started crying. I think something is wrong with the baby. His expression changed immediately. He rushed toward her. And from the doorway, I watched Serena smile through her tears. I knew that smile. She had worn it before. Because Serena had just realized something. The inheritance was gone. The company was gone. The house was no longer hers. But the baby was still the one thing Michael would destroy himself to protect. And she intended to use it. Again. Serena's little performance worked. Michael carried her straight to the car. I didn't follow. I had already learned one important lesson from my first life. Whenever Serena cried, Michael stopped thinking. So, I went home. My home. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, the Caldwell estate actually belonged to me. By midnight, the lawyers had changed the locks on the company offices and transferred control of the family trust. By morning, Michael's access card stopped working. His assistant called him 3 times. Then 4. Then 5. He ignored every call. He was sitting beside Serena's hospital bed. She had been examined and discharged within an hour. The baby was perfectly fine. Michael knew it. I knew it. Serena knew it most of all. But she still kept one hand on her stomach and whispered, the doctor said stress is dangerous. Michael immediately softened. Then don't stress. I can't help it. Her eyes filled with tears. Everything is falling apart. Michael looked down. This is my fault. That was the first thing he'd said all night that sounded honest. Unfortunately, he still hadn't figured out whose fault it actually was. When he returned to the estate the next morning, he found me sitting at the dining table with Mr. Hayes. Michael stopped at the doorway. What are you doing? Eating breakfast. This is my house. I looked around. Technically it's mine. His face tightened. I need to speak with you privately. Sure. Mr. Hayes stood. I'll leave you too. Michael waited until the door closed. Then, he dropped a stack of papers onto the table. Reverse the transfer.
No.
Stella.
No.
His eyes hardened. You know I never wanted the company more than I wanted Serena. Then, congratulations. He stared at me. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. I took another bite of toast. You wanted Serena. You married Serena. You gave her the ring. You gave her my house. You gave her my childhood pendant. You gave her every apology you owed me. I looked up. And now you want my inheritance because your plan went badly? His face went pale. I didn't know. Neither did I. That stopped him. I smiled. That's the funny part. He looked away. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he quietly asked, did you really not kill Serena? I froze. There it was. The question I had waited 30 years to hear. Not an accusation. Not a punishment. A question. I put my fork down.
No.
Michael swallowed. Then what happened that night? I leaned back. I don't know. His eyes narrowed. You don't remember? I remember enough. I looked directly at him. I remember you being drugged. I remember Serena watching from the doorway. I remember being blamed. That's all. Michael's expression changed. Serena told me you pushed her. Then ask Serena. He didn't answer. Because Serena had been standing outside the dining room, listening. Her face had gone completely white. Michael turned toward the doorway. Serena. She forced a smile. I came to check on you.
No.
His voice was different. Tell me what happened that night. She froze. I watched her fingers tighten around the doorframe. I already told you.
No.
Michael stepped toward her. You told me Stella pushed you. She did. Then why did you never tell me where you were standing? Serena's lips parted. Michael continued. Because I remembered something last night. My stomach tightened. He touched his temple. I remembered the doorway. Serena stopped breathing. I remembered seeing you. He stared at her, standing there. Her face collapsed. Michael whispered. You weren't outside. Serena took one step backward. You were inside. And suddenly, the entire room changed. I had expected Michael to remember eventually. I hadn't expected it to happen this quickly. Serena started crying. Michael, I was scared. You watched. I didn't know what to do. You watched. I was pregnant. You weren't pregnant yet. Her crying stopped. Michael stared at her. I stared at her. Serena slowly lowered her hand from her stomach. Michael's face went blank. You said you were pregnant that night. She said nothing. He took another step. You weren't, Michael. You weren't pregnant. Her silence answered him. He looked like someone had punched the air out of his lungs. Then Serena suddenly grabbed his arm. I found out afterward. Michael ripped his arm away. Then why did you tell me you were pregnant that night? She couldn't answer. And that was the first crack. Not the whole truth. Just the first crack. Michael looked at me. For once, there was no hatred in his eyes. There was something worse. Regret. Stella. I stood. Don't. He stopped. You don't get to say my name like that now. His lips trembled. I was wrong. I laughed. About what? Everything. No. I walked past him. You were wrong 30 years ago. I stopped at the doorway. This time, you're simply late. Then I left him standing there. Behind me, Serena suddenly screamed. Michael. I turned. She was clutching her stomach. But this time, Michael didn't rush to her. He simply stared, because he had finally realized something neither of us had understood before. Serena's pregnancy had been the weapon she used to control him. And now that he knew she had lied once, he no longer knew which parts of her story were real. Serena saw the doubt on his face. And she panicked. Michael, you don't trust me? He didn't answer. She began sobbing. You promised you'd protect me. Michael looked at her stomach. Then at me. Then back at Serena. I promised a lot of things. His voice was hollow. And apparently I was very good at breaking them. For the first time, Serena looked afraid. Not because she had lost the company. Not because she had lost the house. Because Michael was finally starting to think. And thinking was the one thing Serena had never planned for.